It is an honor to introduce my friend and guest today, Oscar Vélez from Three Brothers Painting. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you. So let's just dive right into your story. Like, tell us about your company, where you guys are located, how it kind of came about.
Yeah, sure thing. The company name is Three Brothers Painting, and one of the most often asked questions that I get is, "Which brother are you?" And I always joke and I say, "Well, actually, I was 8 years old when the company started, so I didn't make it into the name. It's my dad and two of my uncles that are the original three brothers. They started back in '91, doing a lot of new construction back in the day. Construction to this day still is booming in Georgia, although there was that break in 2008 that we all know about, but we were able to weather that because right at that time we switched over to mainly focusing on residential, which is really still our main focus. Is just making sure that we're working directly with the homeowner and able to bring them that quality that you don't really see in new construction, unfortunately. So that really is my focus and has been. I started in the business roughly 22 years ago or so. I'm 41. I think I started 19 going out and actually doing the estimates and stuff. But I was out there, during the summers and learning the trades, starting at the bottom, essentially learning more about the coatings, the products, and how to apply them. Took a little break, wanted to be a rock star for a little bit. That didn't work out, so I'm here, talking about our painting company.
I was going to say, did you ever try anything else?
I did, yeah. I had one high school job at Mailboxes, etc., which doesn't exist anymore, I believe. It's now the UPS store.
Yeah.
So I sorted people's mail, packed packages and whatnot for about a year. But that was when I was a teenager, and then right out of high school, when I wasn't, working in the family business during the summers, I really wanted to play guitar, and bass and various bands. So I did that for a couple of years. But again, there's no money in music, unfortunately, and especially not a whole lot in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I
So, yeah,
understand.
buckled down and figured out that, as good as I was selling merch, our shirts and stuff when we were on the road, I'm really, really good at that, So I found out that it's really, really nice to make connections with clients, and going and learning their story, Um, because I've been able to do this for so long. I have clients that I've had relationships with for 15, almost 20 years. I'm going into second generations of some of these businesses, seeing them from when they were 7, 8 years old, and now they've got little ones. It's super cool. One of the things that we really focused on at the end of 21 was we wanted to rebrand because it had been 30 years. The
Mm-hmm.
business started in 91. In 2001, we hit our 30th year mark, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But with that came, okay, we're the new generation. My sister and I, we're business partners, the original three brothers, just to fill people in. Two of my uncles are still in the company. They run teams. But my dad has stepped back. He runs other businesses as well. So for the last year and change, my sister and I have been business partners and owners of the company, which has been really great and also scary,
Mm-hmm.
because not only are we doing our day to day that we have been doing for the last 20 years, but we also have the responsibilities as owners, and just making sure that the company is healthy and moving forward instead of regressing. And it's been a challenge, but it's been one that has been interesting and fun. You know,
Mm-hmm. I mean,
uh,
they say it's not really easy to work with family. Do you find that at times to be
we
an
we
issue?
certainly have had our struggles over the years, but I think we have just gotten into this groove where it doesn't matter what happens at work. Sunday dinners, it's at the office.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. We could have had you were supposed to do this or blah blah blah. A
Yeah.
blow up, dust up, what have you. Like anybody does at work, and then see each other later on and nothing. We're able to separate work and family because otherwise you set yourself up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like my family, so I want to make sure that right before we started talking, I talked about how close, my family lives within the area of each other. My folks are 6 doors down. My brother's a 3-minute drive. My sister's maybe 15 minutes in traffic.
That's awesome.
And we do try to have those weekly, Sunday dinners, just because it's important to stay together. So no, I don't necessarily think that it's difficult to work with family as long as you are very good at putting up boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Very important.
you know,
Um, Going back a little bit, you said your dad, Carlos, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My dad's Carlos.
What did he start the company initially, or
He
was it your
did.
uncles? Or
So with the, and it's a funny story actually how they got the name. My dad used to do, like I said, new construction back in the '90s for
mm-hmm.
somebody else back in '91. But the company that he was working for, obviously he wasn't the owner. I was told a story about how the company came to be was the general contractor or the guy in charge, the project manager, excuse me, didn't want to work with that particular guy anymore, but really liked working with my dad. So he asked him, "It's like that guy's fired. I want to work with you. What's your company name?" My dad looked at his brothers and goes, "Three Brothers Painting," you know, and
Wow.
that was the you know, kind of apocryphal, you know, story that we kept hearing for all of these years. And about 2 years ago, I had a meeting with somebody. Don't know him from Adam, and he goes, "I knew your dad back in the John Whelan days. I was there the day that the company started when when the other guy got fired." And he said, "My company's Three Brothers Painting," and I didn't prompt him for that. I said,
Right.
"Wait a minute, that happened?" I thought he was just messing with us. So no, he
True
started it.
story.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my gosh, really?" You know, that's
Yeah.
so. It made me laugh so hard. You know, and obviously he knew us. You know, and 20 something years later, he called us. You know, to do his own personal home. I think we'd done it, you know, many years in the past, but I didn't work with him personally at that point. But yeah, so he is no longer involved in the you know, in Three Brothers Painting, although he runs his other businesses. But you know, much like that kind of brings me to my point. Rather, I wanted to talk about you know, when that guy said that he remembered us from 1991 and then called us. You know, that when we were rebranding, I touched on that a little
Yes.
bit. You know, it had been 30 years, same colors, same logo. Obviously, we didn't want to change the name. We have a lot of history here in
Mm-hmm.
the metro Atlanta area. But we updated our colors, you know, a beautiful teal. We still kept the greens. We still kept a little bit of the orange. It was really important for me to keep the cactus and the sun, you know, that was in our
Yes.
previous logo because that speaks a lot to our, you know, Latino heritage. You know, it just kind of those southwestern, you know, and
Roots.
Latino, yeah, roots. So we worked with somebody to put all of that together for us, and she couldn't have done a better job. We're so happy with it, and I actually am pretty proud of the catch line that we came up with. It's your painters for life,
I like
and
that.
it came to me so quickly because that really is how I feel. You know, like once we start a relationship with somebody, I know that I'm going to continue to see them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if I look at my client records, you know, the way that we organize them is that everybody has their homepage, and then we see all the jobs that we've done for them over the years. And, you know, some of them are 6, 8, 10, you know, spanning 10 years, you know, 12 years or longer. It's a privilege, you know,
Yeah,
to
you have
have people's trust.
that longevity with the client,
Absolutely. You
and
know, and
then
showing up and being like, "Oh, how are your kids? How's your pup?" You know, because they remember, you know, and that's really cool. I'm very fortunate. Uh, I do tell my clients, you know, I love my job because I get to meet really cool, really interesting people every day, and I get to help them. You know, one of the things that I love about our industry is that I joke around with folks, and if I'm doing an exterior, is like, and especially if they're keeping the same color, it's a maintenance thing. They probably just want to keep it from rotting and whatnot. So I'll joke around with them and say something like, "Exterior paint job, it's not fun. You know, you're already getting something that you already had, rather. You know, you're just but." If you want to do a color change, you know, because you bought a house that you love the bones, but you just hate the exterior color, it's salmon. You want to go with something more updated, those are the ones that I love because your home is your castle, you know, and you shouldn't like pull into your street and be like, "Oh, that green," you know, or whatever it might
yeah,
be.
dread going home because you don't
Exactly.
like it.
And especially with the interiors, you know, interiors are where we really have fun with clients because although I don't tell them you should use this color, you should use that color because I'm not a designer. I mean, look how I'm
Mm-hmm.
dressed, you know, but I always tell folks like I can tell you what coatings are best with it, but with your interior, you get to pick whatever color makes you happy, you know, and it's such an important thing to have that peaceful space. In your home, you don't want to dread home and see the salmon or the peachy or whatever color that just is so offensive that the previous colors put in there for a little bit. Have somebody just take care of it for it.
Mm-hmm.
And
What's been the most drastic color change you've seen, like exterior or interior? Like,
well, actually, it's one of the growing trends over the last couple of years has been to just go stark white on everything. It's tough. It's I didn't like that trend, and I'll tell you why. Whites don't cover as easily as do neutral colors, so your job is already going to be more expensive because of that. We have to do a true primer and then minimum of two top coats to cover even like a medium tone color. Uh, so what ends up happening is that it ends up being about 30 to 35% more expensive. Also, one of the newer trends, like I was just saying, is because you go white on everything, you lose contrast. You've got your walls, your trim, your ceiling, all the same color, although they might be slightly different sheens, and you lose that little bit of detail on your windows, on your baseboard, this beautiful crown molding that you might have. So we had a networking meeting where what's a trend you're seeing in your industry that you're
yeah.
excited about, which is actually very apropos to this question. Is I like that color. It's coming back a little bit. As somebody said, beige is coming back. I'm like, I don't know about beige, but we're seeing depth. We're seeing beautiful colors. Actually, about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, Sherwin-Williams Color of the Year was a very rich emerald green. I was like, yeah, I'm here for it. Because I got so tired of just seeing white spaces everywhere. They're
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, but it would be shocking to me to come home and see so much starkness.
Yeah.
So I
I like
like,
that on furniture too,
yeah,
that color.
exactly, right. So that's something that was a bit of a challenge, to answer your question is when we saw two or three of these white spaces early on in 2019 that just weren't covering, we had to go to the client and be like, hey, we have
Mm-hmm.
to do a third coat, and that's an unexpected expense, which,
Mm-hmm.
at the time wasn't a great conversation to have. But quickly, because of those two or three in a row, I saw this trend coming, and I started asking folks, are we going white? When I didn't used to, because that wasn't a thing. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them did. So we have to have the conversation so it's, ahead of time, so it's not on the back end, hey, we're using premium coatings,
Mm-hmm.
but they're still not covering because this, and this. Now it's, hey, here's what to expect. Here's your price. It's going to be more if you go with the white, or we can go with something like an agreeable gray, accessible beige, or something that still is light but has
Yeah.
depth to it and actually
I
covers
personally
better.
like the light gray
Yeah,
colors.
yeah, I love it.
Is there tools that is that one of the challenges when you are talking to a client, like the color choice, and are there tools available that you could show them, like
Yeah, yeah.
resources and
So I have an app, it's by Sherwin Williams. Although they all do it, it's just the handiest one. It's
yeah.
called Color Snap. You can download it on your phone, and their entire like digital color library is on there. I do always tell my clients this is how the color is going to look on your phone with your brightness at 100% or whatever you've got it set to. So please make sure to actually get the color, buy a sample of it, and try it out on not just your wall, but on a poster board. I'm going to tell you why. Colors lie. Colors are completely relative depending on what you have it next to. I
Mm-hmm.
talked about that beautiful emerald green that was the color, right? So if you have an emerald green and you do a couple of small samples inside of that wall of like a medium tone gray or a khaki or what have you, they're going to look white because that green background is so dark that it's going to wash out those colors. So what's happened a lot of times is that folks, I call it the wall of terror when I go up and there's, 16 samples up on the wall and they're all labeled, with a code and everything,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so overwhelming that they don't know what's what. So I always say, don't do this. Narrow it down to three. The three that you've got it down to. Then get your little poster board next time you're at Publix, Target, what have you. Get some school poster board and do your samples in the middle of it, leaving some white around it because white is as neutral as it comes. So that way you see what your color looks like on a neutral surface. But don't forget about your trim because not all trim is bright white. Some trims are going to have a little creamier color. Some trims are going to be straight up almondy. You want to make sure that your gray doesn't lean purple, doesn't lean blue, doesn't have a greeny tint to it. compared to your trim.
That's
So
good
there's a
advice because
lot of
the colors
things.
can lie. Like you can pick out different, I guess, swatches. Is that
I
what they're
have
called?
an actual, unfortunately, horror story. For a previous client. I'm not a very big fan of yellows, but we did this home that was a beautiful country yellow. I was like, wow, nice. The woman had decorated it beautifully, and apparently
Mm-hmm.
one of the neighbors thought so as well because she called us a couple of weeks later, wanted that same yellow in her own home. She's like 3 or 4 doors down, same side of the street, same exposure as far as sun goes, but she had different furniture. She had different floors. I remember there being an extended, covered patio, so there wasn't a whole lot of natural light coming in, and the same yellow looked like Dijon mustard in her
Oh
home,
no.
and it was a hot mess, and unfortunately it had to be redone, and that's an expense, so I tell people no pressure, but nail it, because I love repeat business, but not the day after.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh man, what did she go with? I'm
She
curious.
kept it the same, actually.
Oh
I
really?
remember yeah, I actually remember that now. She ended up having to keep it the same. She didn't have it in her budget to redo it.
Oh okay. She just
Yeah.
had to live with it,
Yeah.
make it work.
That was a bummer. I was like, oh, it's the same to do it over again. I remember that now.
Oh no.
That's why it's a horror story, because she loved it.
Yeah, do
And
your
her
homework first.
neighbors brought it into hers. That's also a thing, even within your own colors. If you're moving into a new home, I have another client that they were up in New York, brownstone, only windows on the front and the rear. Decorator's white from Benjamin Moore is a beautiful color. It's highly requested. When they came down to Atlanta, they bought a home with floor to ceiling windows all across the back of the house, like southwestern exposure, a lot of beautiful light coming in. And we'd already done $3,000 worth of ceilings in this beautiful, decorator's white, and it came out yellow because of how much sunlight was coming in. It cast different than up north. And
Mhm.
so they thankfully had the budget to redo it, but
Yeah,
that's three
things to
thousand
come.
dollars that they
Yeah,
could have spent on something else.
things to consider
Yeah,
before choosing the
absolutely.
color. You have to think about all of the things.
$50 expenditure on a couple of samples could save you thousands and thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
So that is my biggest tool, actually, your own time,
Yeah.
to make sure that you are nailing the color. Because again, I'll say it. I say it 7 times a day. I love repeat business, but not the day after.
Mhm. And going back to the exterior, I saw that you guys do like pressure washing.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. That's the
interesting.
first thing that we have to do, actually, because when you paint an exterior, it has to be clean. After 5, 6, 7, 10 years of a home not having been maintained, it's going to have mildew. We live in the South, a lot of humidity. And so your north side, your northeastern side is going to get a lot of algae, depending on how much tree cover you get. We can't just paint on top of that. So the first thing is a pressure wash to make sure that everything is nice and clean. After that, we're going to do all the putting, caulking, make sure that everything is sealed up. Essentially, everything we need to do to make sure that the house is being protected against wood rot. That's why I say the exterior paint job isn't a fun project if you're just putting the same color back on there, because you're
Mhm.
doing your maintenance. You're just making sure that your siding is staying, in decent shape. Your trim, house does look clean and it does look beautiful. So I shouldn't say that it's boring, but it's not
No,
such a
I get
drastic
it.
change as your interior space, which you can have such a different quality of life, from going to a color that you hate on the interior to a color that you get to sit in, during your free
Mhm.
time.
Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of experience. Like, did you just develop that over the years, or like, with the painting trait?
Yeah, so I would say, yeah. I mean, you know, doing this on and off realistically since I was like 13 in the summers, I've just picked up a lot of knowledge on the products, and applying them over the years and studying so much research. Like, the phrase, it's like watching paint dry. I'm like, yeah, let's do it, because it is really cool seeing how some of these coatings behave differently from others, and I like educating people. I'm not necessarily a know-it-all. I hope so. I hope not anyway, rather. But
Yeah.
not a whole lot of people know about paint. There's no reason for the general, public to know as much about paint as I do. And I like being an educator to my clients. What are you looking for? Here's how we can get there.
Mhm. And you have good advice because I think, especially like as women, I can only speak that we get excited. You
Mm,
might see something on Pinterest and be like, oh, that would be super cute for my baby's nursery.
hmm
And then you go and you attempt to do something and it's like, oh, that's not at all like what I saw in my
Yeah,
picture, you
yeah,
know?
we got a couple of those. We do a lot of popcorn sealing, removal and smoothing out and whatnot. And apparently, there's like 1,000 YouTube videos showing you how it should take 5 minutes. I'm like, no, no, that's
Yeah.
not how it's done. So yeah, sometimes those HGTV shows and all of
Hmm.
that. Anytime that they show like, oh, this is how you do that, I'm like, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know a whole lot about other industries, but I don't trust those shows
Hmm.
just because knowing the trades, being in the trades rather. I don't know everything about everything else, but I know a lot about paint.
Yeah.
So I can tell clients, oh, well, I saw a video on how to do this or whatever. Well, actually, these are the steps that you should take.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And I always do tell my clients, even like, hey, if you don't use us for a small little project or whatever, you got a kid's bedroom you're going to be painting, call me for some advice.
Yeah.
Because
That's nice.
that's free. It's a couple of minutes of my
Yeah.
time. It's not a big deal.
Well, Three Brothers Painting has been around for over 30 years.
Yeah,
Like, what
32.
what do you attribute to that your company's longevity and success and this like competitive market?
I would say probably continuity as far as, being family owned. Again, my dad was involved for 30 years, and for the
Hmm.
last 10 or so, he really just did that, 10,000-foot view while letting my sister and I really manage the day to day while he was working on the back end. But like I was saying earlier, some of these clients I've had for a decade plus, so when they consistently see me time and time and time again, I think that reinforces the fact that we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We have a brick and mortar office. Not a lot of these companies will. I have, jokingly say, sure, you can call Chuck in a truck, but who knows where they're going to be next week or if they're even going to be painting still. We
Hmm.
have, since 1991. Um, been in business. Started out in Roswell, but have been in Woodstock since 1994.
And
I want to say.
how big is your crew or how
We have
many?
eight teams running, from 2 to 8 guys each team. So we're
Nice.
able to handle pretty much any size project.
And you guys have never thought about like franchising? That's not something that
No,
you.
no, the franchising model for us it doesn't make sense because what I want is to make sure that when we put out a product, it's our product. Uh, we, my wife and I had talked about, having, we have family down in Florida, we have family up in North Carolina, and so we kicked around the tires of, oh, what about, a branch up there or whatever, but
Hmm.
there's just no real way that I could see having any sort of major oversight, and things could be done with our name that we don't know what's happening. So
Hmm.
I want to stick to the metro Atlanta area and have my finger in everything because if I don't, that's not the service that we've been providing for over 30 years.
Yeah.
So no,
And you.
franchising is not something that I would be interested
Yeah,
in.
and you like you've already developed relationships. Like that's what you do every single day. Like you
Yeah,
said, is
yeah,
talking to these people. So you
absolutely.
probably would lose. That would be really hard to
Absolutely.
stretch
It's
yourself really
like,
thin.
oh no, now we've got Three Brothers Painting, Cobb or Three Brothers Painting whatever, and my clients over there can't call me anymore because it's not my territory.
Hmm.
That would really upset me. So
Yeah. Have
I
there?
just like people,
Yes. Have there been any like unexpected challenges that you've had to face
Um,
or navigate through?
well,
Um,
I was very fortunate that I was super, early on in the business when the 2008 crash happened. That at the time construction was booming, and we had still a fair amount of new construction projects, or contracts rather,
mhm.
leading through 2008. But actually, we hadn't re-upped for any for 2009 because my father at the time was already planning on focusing on residential with the ending of these contracts. So thankfully, my dad accidentally already had a plan in place so that we weren't too affected by that, crash of new construction. Another thing that happened is actually uh, around that same time, maybe 2009, Katrina happened in 2005, and some of the teams that we were running then actually left Georgia and they went to New Orleans because everything was being rebuilt, down there, and there was so much work. Maybe that's when we could have franchised, and have something going on over there. But it's been 15 years since that happened. That actually, I think, at the end of the day, ended up really helping us though because we kind of shrunk down a little bit, and so the crash happened. There wasn't nearly as much work, but I also didn't have 10 teams. We had 6 teams or 7 teams or whatever it may have been back in the day. I don't recall. But everybody stayed busy, and we were able to weather that storm. COVID certainly, was a bit of a challenge at first. We, for the first little bit, nobody had any idea what was happening. So we were doing virtual estimates, or hey, shoot a video, shoot me a walkthrough,
Yeah.
or take photos and send them to me from opposite corners. Until the mandate was, oh, mask up and keep some distance, and then we started going back into people's homes again. Um, Thankfully, the initial mandate was if you're an essential business, and real estate fell under that. And being that we do a lot of real estate, the painting for realtors, homeowners, and whatnot, we were still going into vacants. We were doing a lot of interior spaces for vacant homes, exterior spaces for vacant homes. But once everyone kind of adjusted to, okay, this is kind of where we're at right now, 2021 and 22 were boom years. They were the 3 best years that Three Brothers has had ever, just because folks were, at home, not going to Disney, not going out to eat as much,
Mm-hmm.
and having money. I had excess money because I didn't take my kids on vacations and stuff,
Yeah.
so we
You
did some
probably had more
upgrades.
time to think, well, that color is now really bothering
That's
me.
actually it. Folks were starting to work at home and seeing like, oh, I didn't know that crack was there, and I got hundreds of calls of like, I didn't even notice that my house looked like this,
Mm-hmm.
so that was certainly a challenge, but then, we pivoted a little bit and were able
Yeah, it's good
to
that
weather it.
you were able to do things virtually and
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
tools we
that
have
we were
nowadays.
flipping out for a little bit there. It's
Mm-hmm.
like half our business is inside. What are we gonna
Scary.
do?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Um, how has your experience working with the crews shaped your leadership style today?
Um, I want to say that's a great question. Um, I think I just, even with my teams, like to just be personable and be like, hey, is this how we do things? And not, you need to do this or what have you, because at the end of the day, these are people. I can't just boss them around like if they were children. So it's, I have been doing a lot of like self-reflective work in the last couple of years, and trying to communicate better with people. I took an improv class about a year and change ago, because you have to be quick on your feet and be able to convey an idea quickly and efficiently. And I challenge anybody, if you have trouble getting your ideas across, join improv. It's silly, but it gives you some incredible tools as
Mm.
to how to quickly, get yourself out of a situation. And not to say that I have to get myself out of a situation with my guys, but it's better how to communicate with them, and have ideas that are cogent, and just speaking better, I guess, at the end of the day is
Yeah,
what I want to say.
we're in the relationship business.
Yeah. And some
um,
of these guys I've had, on our team for 15 years, 20 years. They've known me since I was 20 years old. Now I'm 41,
mhm.
and so we have a lot of history.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self starting in the painting business?
Starting out, I would have told myself, don't take it so seriously. When I first started going out and doing estimates, I was there and I was on a mission. I was like, I am here to sell you paint, and like this needs to happen before I leave your house, and just as I developed my own style, of being a salesman, or what
Mm-hmm.
have you, I found out that that's not really the way to go about it. I was still closing deals, but
Yeah.
I think being personable Uh, and having a rapport and a relationship with somebody leads to business. So I would tell myself, my 20-year-old self, hey, like crack a joke every now and
Yeah.
then, like don't just focus on super pain versus A100 versus whatever.
I love that. How do you define success for Three Brothers Painting beyond just financial gain?
Um, Honestly, it's not. Yeah, it's not the financial. It's the I have put in my 20 years of running my day-to-day business. Now also with the ownership side of it, but because I'm on the front side of it. I'm very fortunate that I get to be not quite a flexible schedule because I have to work during people's work times as well, but I can take my boys to school in the mornings, and I can move my schedule around so I can pick
That's
them
nice.
up. Or yesterday, I picked up my son, my youngest, at a location that my oldest was volunteering at. And so the youngest couldn't be there, but it's 4 p.m. and I can, because we have shaped our business to where I have that opportunity. And it's fantastic. And that's one of the benefits of working as a family business is that they know that my family is important to me because it's them. So hey,
Yes.
and the same goes for my teams. Like um, it's not a hey, you have to be here 9 to 5 or whatever. It's here's the project. Um, you have 3 to 4 days to wrap it up, and make sure that it's done to our standard. We'll be checking in with you. We'll have the walkthrough with the homeowner, but take your process and do it correctly. If you wrap it up early and you wrap it up well, you still did the project,
Mm-hmm.
so you can wrap it up and go home to your family, so
Yeah.
these are the things that I really think kind of differentiate us
Yeah.
from a lot of places out
Your
there.
family-owned business,
Family owned, family oriented.
generational,
Yeah,
and I love
I'm
seeing
I'm
the.
super proud of that actually.
Yeah, I love seeing the video of like if you guys go to your Instagram, which is just Three Brothers Painting,
Yeah.
you see your son Grayson doing a reel
Yeah,
on
so
there,
my oldest is a self-avowed theater kid. He
and
loves it, and he is very good at being on camera whenever he gets it from. And so my wife wanted to shoot a little video of him, instead of me. I wrote out the script, I think,
hmm
and told him what to say. But
yeah,
yeah, he did his 60 seconds of knocking it out of the park, and I'm actually gonna. I've taken him on a couple of calls already, and
that's
I'm
awesome.
just like, hey, just don't touch anything, But I was roughly that age when I started going out with my dad, So I kind of
Yes.
want to let him know this is what your dad does. He talks all day,
Yes.
surprise, but
Yes, lead by example, and he
yeah.
has a great role model. That's awesome. Where can people connect with you to find out more about you and your company?
Our easiest place to reach us is going to be threebrotherspainting.com, and that's with three spelled out.
Okay.
Also, we're on Facebook, uh, Instagram. I think we have a TikTok, and yeah, just the usual social channels. That's where you'll
Awesome.
find my videos. I do like to do those actually because all it takes is a minute of my time, and I always like to drop something informative
Mm-hmm.
that is something that I'm asked a lot about. I've had a lot of my clients actually, even before the first meeting, when they're making that call, say, I saw your video about this. So I already know what you look like, which is funny,
Yeah.
but it's also informative. They're like, I didn't know that this was this,
Yes.
so I know that people are looking at them because we
Yeah.
get comments on
Keep doing
them.
it because
Yeah,
I mean we
it's
can
very
easily
cool.
scroll through like a picture, but when it's video content, that
Yeah.
really is like eye catching and like, oh, I want to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully it's, informative.
It is. Thank you, Oscar, for coming on today and being on today's episode and sharing your insights and your stories. I really appreciate you. So
I'm
thank you.
happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.